Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining this week's CRM webinar. We're going to be going over the CRM import tool using the templates. My name is Chrissy Leffler. I'm a CRM analyst, and I've been with the company for about 5 years. So we're going to go over the import tool today, templates, and at the end, we're going to have plenty of time for any questions. So keep note of those as we go along. So the first thing that we want to look at today is all of the bullet points that we're going to cover. So what are the best things to do to keep a clean Excel file? What are the things that you should keep in mind when mapping your fields? So mapping from the import file to the CRM. How to do the import overall using the templates, doing the duplicate check, and then if you are trying to fill brochures and doing a brochure code on the import, we'll take a look at that because that's going to be very important for the fill report. So the first things we'll go over are the tips for a clean Excel file. This is going to be available in the portal, so don't feel like you have to memorize what's on the screen or write anything down, but let's just go over some of the big things that we need to remember about cleaning our Excel file. Formatting is going to be a big thing. We want to make sure that you remove special formatting from your fields or columns in the Excel document. Those aren't going to be compatible with CRM, so we want to make sure that we keep formatting clear of that. We also need to have a clear header row in the document, and the best thing to do is make sure that the header row is used or named after an actual field in the CRM. So if we're going to do first name, we want first name. You don't want to put contact name or something like that. We want to use first name, last name for our contacts, and so on. And in a moment, I'll bring up the Excel file I'm going to use, and we can see how I have laid mine out. Make sure that you have the correct data under the correct column in your document, or we're going to run the risk of importing the data into the wrong field. Anytime that you are importing a field that is a multi-select in your CRM, such as a consumer's interest, someone could be interested in multiple things, and so we want to make sure that we capture each and every interest. And when you're doing that, we want to make sure that we separate those interests by a comma within the column. Also, you can consider using the rules set up in CRM to keep the data uniform. This is going to be set up in the admin section under rules setup. So if you guys are abbreviating the word street to ST, things like that, make sure that those are set up ahead of time, because even if we import the data spelling out the word street, it's going to then be redefined using those rules. So street would automatically be abbreviated to ST. When saving your Excel file after you've done your cleanup, we always want to make sure that it's saved as a CSV file. That is the only file format that's compatible with the import. So that's going to be a #1 thing. And then also just reviewing drop-down values and UDFs in your CRM. If you plan on populating any of that data, just make sure that you have your values set up properly for the drop-downs. And if you have some extra data that doesn't have a standard field to populate into CRM, make sure you have a UDF in place for that. Sometimes we commonly see a second place for another email address. So sometimes we have like an email to UDF. So let's take a look at the document that I have prepared for today. So I'll kind of expand some of these so that you can see what I've done. And remember, we spoke about using the clear header rows and naming these fields after actual CRM fields in the CRM. So I have first name, last name, and you can see I've done physical address 1. So this is going to help me out in the import process because it's going to recognize this column and any data under it as the physical address #1, because as you know, we've got address 1, 2, 3. So my next one is physical address 2. physical city, physical state. Having the word physical in there is going to help me map it directly to the physical address fields because as you know we have shipping and billing. Now you can populate those into shipping and billing also if you would like, but just to get started this is going to help you map it right into those fields to get going, and then you can decide to also insert those into shipping and billing and so on. So these are my clear header rows. I've named my field or my header rows as fields in the CRM exactly. One thing that I want to point out here that I did is the send email. As we know, the send email field in CRM is a yes, no. So if you want to populate that in the imports because maybe you have a mixture of yeses and nos in your document, we can use a 1 for a yes and a 0 for a no. If you have a document that is all yeses or all nos, we can control this actually in the default settings screen that we'll go over in just a bit. And also we can include inquiry information in our import because when we do the import, we're going to be importing contact information and the matching inquiry information. So on my document, I have separate inquiry dates. So these are people that inquired at different dates and we want to capture that exact date. If you're importing a file that has the same date across the board, you don't even have to include this as a column in the import because we can control the date that will mark everyone down as in the default screen. So the next thing I want to show you here is the actual importing and the using of the template. So as before, or even now, you can skip the template process. You do not have to use a template every time you import, but the template is going to be here to help you import spreadsheets that you're importing on a regular basis. So if you're getting a list of contacts from another resource, and this is something that you're importing on a monthly basis, and your spreadsheet is laid out the same every single time, it's the same data every time, instead of just mapping that every time, every month, you can now set up a template to memorize how you've mapped it this one time, and you don't have to do the mapping or the default screen on the next time. So I'm going to go straight into the CRM here. Hopefully this is large enough for everybody to see. I'll try to zoom in a little bit to help out. So at this point, I'm in my consumer user group under contacts, under import contacts. And right now it wants me to browse my hard drive to find the file. And it's also asking me, would I like to create a new template or use an existing? The way I'm going to go through this the first time is to create a template so we can go through the full import process. And then we'll kind of take a step back and go through, well, what does it look like when I utilize a template I already made? So I'm going to skip the first drop down and I'm going to go straight into create new template. And I'm going to give this template a name. So you want to name this something that you're going to remember exactly what it's for, especially if this is a recurring import that you're doing every month or so, something that you know exactly what it is. I've given it a name, and now I just need to browse my hard drive for the file that I'm going to use for the import today. And a good tip to know, just in case you're not super savvy with Excel, the A with the little comma here is a dead giveaway that you have already saved this as a CSV, so no worries there. I'm going to go ahead and select that. I've got my file right here, and now I need to pick a contact tag. So these are tags that have already been created. If you don't have a tag ready to go, you can create one on the fly by using the Create New tag over on the right-hand side. I'm just going to use one that I already have in here. And the next option is to create an order. That is if we're going to be filling some brochures and you would like to create an order for each of the people in our list. I'm not going through that part of this today, so we're going to go right into the import here. So the next step is to go next. So remember, this is going to create our template for us with the name that we gave it. And the first step we're looking at here is the mapping. So as you can see, we're looking at contact mapping settings here on the left. And on the right, inquiry mappings. They are controlled separately from each other, so we're worried about contact level information and then inquiry level information on the right. So since I did a good job with naming my header rows with the names of the fields in CRM, it's done most of the work for me. You can see that first name, it pulled my first name column. So let me just click on one of these. Inside the drop-down is every single column from my spreadsheet. So that's what we're doing. We're mapping my spreadsheet to the fields here in CRM. And it's done most of the work for me because I named them exactly how they exist in CRM. You want to make sure that every column is mapped to the CRM. We don't want to leave something unmapped. And also, you don't want to create a mapping for something that you don't have. So just go through very carefully and just make sure that everything is being mapped as it should. So I have first name, last name, going through. It mapped my email. Since I did include my send email using the number 1, meaning yes, I want this to go into the send email field. There may be times where you won't do that, and the regular email address field will populate in here also. You just need to go in and select none to get rid of it. Send fax. That is the same as the send email field. It is a checkbox. We don't want to put our fax number into that field, so this is an example of me removing it. Going through, it mapped exactly for my physical address 1 and 2. I didn't have an address 3, and it skipped that one. Physical city, state, zip, and country. Now, if I wanted to, I could continue to populate my physical address into the billing. That's fine. It's just going to, straight across the board, put in whatever address I have down for physical, billing, and shipping. It's up to you if you want to do that. Now I'm down to primary phone. That's exactly what I want it to do, but I don't want it to populate into the extension field. It just picked it up by the wording that I chose. None. I do want fax, but I don't want it to go into the fax extension, so I want to put none here. Cell phone matched perfectly, and my email to field. So this is a UDF that I decided to create. So my email is going to go into the standard email field in CRM and then my custom field, which is fine. And if I didn't want that for any reason, I could take it out and put none. And then over on the right-hand side, we're worried about our inquiry mappings. Now on my document, I did have inquiry dates. So I'm capturing a specific date for each person, the day that they inquired. And so I do want that to populate into CRM. I'm going to control what type of inquiry type there was or a brochure on my default page. I'm not really worried about that here because I'm going to set the same for everyone. And then my email picked up on another custom field. Since this is the demo CRM, I don't really need that. I'm going to wipe it out. And so I'm ready to go on to the next step, which is our default screen. And let me go back into the PowerPoint here. So we've gone over the mapping, making sure that the phone numbers go into the correct phone number fields. They don't go into the extension fields. You do have the ability to map your address across the board to physical, billing, and shipping if you would like. We went over the clear contact mappings, the clear inquiry mappings. And now we want to take a look at the default values. What are these? What are they going to do? So anything on the default screen that we're about to go over, anything you set there is going to be set for every single contact in the spreadsheet. So this isn't about applying specific data like we just did. We're mapping the same data for everyone. So the same inquiry types, such as these were phone-in contacts or these were walk-in contacts. Inquiry date, if they all inquired on the same day, that's fine. We could put that there. The status, are these contacts active, inactive, etc. And also one thing that we want to really make sure we don't forget is the brochure. If these people inquired because they were asking for the brochure, we can't forget that brochure code because it won't populate the fill report. So as you probably know, the fill report works specifically off of that brochure. So we'll go in and we're going to take a look at these fields. The red ones are required. You do need to fill those in at minimum, but you can expand beyond that and fill in any of the other fields. Just understand that whatever you put in any of these fields are going to go on every record. So here we are on my defaults. I'm going to go over the red ones, and then we can kind of take a look at some of the other ones so that you can see what these are. So the send fax. Do you want to automatically check the fax send, yes or no? If you don't really have a fax integration and you aren't sending those out, you could leave it as no, or you can change it to yes, doesn't hurt. The status. Are we making these contacts active or inactive upon import? We're going to make them active. And I don't have any other required ones for my contact level, but if there was something else that you did want to populate in here, such as method, which is the preferred method, we could do email, anything like that. Anything that you want to populate in here, you can go above and beyond. Just know it will be set for every contact. Over on the right-hand side, we didn't have an inquiry type in our spreadsheet, so it is required by the system. So it wants us to put, how did these individuals inquire to you? Did they call? Did they walk in? So on. I used a call-in tag at the very beginning when I was doing the first step of the import, so I'll do the inquiry type is phone. They called. And then if I need to insert a brochure, I have my list of brochures. Here are the codes right here. And I can set a brochure for everyone. So everyone on the import is going to get a visitor's guide. Everyone on my import is going to populate onto the fill report because of the guide. If you miss this, the fill report will not be populated. Unfortunately, you'll have to go back and fix that. So I think I took care of all of the red fields. I don't feel like I want to insert any of the other information, and that's totally fine. Most of the time, you'll probably just do the red fields and move forward. So I'm going to go next. And at this point, it's pulling in everything that we set, make sure there's no errors, make sure there's nothing wrong with our spreadsheet, and it's just letting us know the data is good and we're ready to take a look at duplicates. So it's saying in my document I had 4 contacts. Out of those 4, there were 4 duplicates, meaning there are at least 4 other records in the CRM that matched what I'm trying to import at this time. So we need to make the decision. Do we import with the duplicate check, meaning going one by one, looking at our duplicates, merging them, or deciding what we need to do, or import without the duplicate check? That means they're just going to go into the system as brand new contacts. The 4 that are already in my CRM now are going to exist separately from the 4 that I'm importing. So I have those explained here on the document, if just in case you need to refer back. But I highly recommend always importing with the duplicate check. It's very important. We're keeping down on the duplicates. It doesn't take that much time to go through these. If you have a very large document that needs to be imported into the CRM, reach out to your CRM analyst maybe for some help with that, just because the bigger your document is, the more potential duplicates there could be, and then you're forced to kind of sit and go through those one by one. So just depending on the size, you feel free to reach out to us with any questions. So I'm going to move into the merging process and what our options are. So you are going to be presented with the contact that you're trying to import, which is up top, and at the bottom, the contact that already exists in the CRM. You have the option to merge the 2 together. You have the option to skip, which means the contact from your spreadsheet won't be imported and nothing's going to happen to the contact that already existed. Or you have the option to add anyway, which is going to import your contact, but also keep the one that already existed separate. So we're not merging them, but they're both going to exist. So I'm going to go through that process with you guys right now, and I'm going to do import with duplicate check. So I've clicked that. It's pulled up my first contact here. So Yvonne Charles is already in the CRM, but she was also on my document. The first thing you need to do is just kind of look over the information. Is this truly the same person? If so, we need to click merge. And it's going to cycle and go to the next contact, and it's going to do that until we're done. Carrie, the information looks the same here, same person. I'm going to merge. Rachel, she's the same person also. I'm going to merge. And then for the last one, this is the same person, but I'll just hit skip so that you can see what it looks like up at the top, because it's kind of keeping, as you can see, a count of what I've done so far. Skip. And so it says out of the contacts that I'm importing, 3 have been imported, 1 is being skipped. Now I'm on to the inquiry part. Importing the inquiries is always separate, just like mapping the data was separate. Next, import inquiries. And it's complete. So it's letting me know again, there were 4 on the document, 3 were imported, and 1 was skipped. So you might be wondering, how is a duplicate actually determined? What are you putting in the document that's going to help you match up those duplicates? Well, the very first thing that the CRM is going to look at is the email address. If an email address from your document matches someone in CRM exactly, we're matching that as a possible duplicate, and we're going to present that to you to make the final decision on whether that is a duplicate or not. If the email is not a match, the next thing that the system will go through is the following here. And this is the first 4 characters of the contact's last name and the first 2 characters of the address 1 and the first 5 characters of the zip code. So my example here, I highlighted the first 4 characters of my last name, the first 2 characters of my address, and the 5 characters of the zip code. If all 3 of these are a match to something in the CRM compared to your document, it's going to be pulled and presented to you as a possible duplicate, and you'll go through the process that we just saw so you can make the decision, is it really a duplicate or not. So keep note of how we determine what a duplicate is. Again, this information will be in the portal for you guys to download later, so don't feel like you have to write it down here. So one of the things that I do after I do an import, it says import complete. So make sure that you get to this screen, you know that it's done. We have finished. Sometimes what I'll do is just kind of pull up one of my contacts out of the system just to make sure that it went okay. So Rachel's over in my recently viewed, and she was on my document. And I'm just going to kind of look over and just make sure that it really is here. So she's here. I've got my call-in tag, the data from my document. It's all here. It all matches. Looks like we've got everything that I put on the document. So feel free to maybe spot check, go through a couple if needed, just to make sure that everything's there. We went over importing the inquiries on their own just by clicking next. And then now we can take a look at, well, what is the difference when I import now with an existing template? Because I've gone through the process with creating a template. What happens when I am importing with a template that's already existing? So I can go through that. But now we're going to be utilizing that first drop-down where we're going to be finding the name of the template from the drop-down and importing that way. And you're going to see how it's going to skip the mapping and default steps because it's remembering what we did before. Now, if let's say you get your document next month and you need to change a couple things. You need to map a field to a different place. You need to change a default, let's say the inquiry type or the inquiry date possibly. We can pick the existing template, but then we can select edit this template. Yes. That's going to open up the mapping field and the default values again where we can make our slight changes. But it's going to save all of the mappings that we've done before. So they'll all be there in place. You're just able to tweak them a bit if necessary. So this is my screen here, editing the template. Simple as that. You just click yes, and when you go into the next page, you'll be able to update that template. So let's take a look at that really quick. So I'm going through the process again, but now I need to find the template that I made. This is the one that I just made moments ago, And let's say I do want to make an edit here. I have a change that needs to be made. I want to click yes. I want to browse my file, find my file. It remembered the tag that I used the last time. If you need to change it, feel free. Use the drop down to pull in a new one or create a new one over on the right hand side. And now here we are to the mapping screen. If I had set edit this template no, I would skip this. I would skip the default screen and I would go directly to the import with duplicate check screen. So it remembered all of my mappings perfectly that I did last time. But if I have a slight change that I need to make, let's say the UDF I have for email 2, I don't want to import that this time. I don't need that. I want to click none. I made my change. I'm going next. It's going to ask me on the default screen. It's remembering everything that I put last time, the visitor's guide, my status, and so on. But if there is something different that I want to do, I can change it here. If you don't have any changes, that's perfect. Go on to the next screen. And now we're at our import with or without duplicate check. So if I had done don't edit the report, or excuse me, the import, I would be right here on this screen. You've skipped the mapping, you skipped the defaults, 2 steps out of the way. So at this point, we would continue on with the duplicate check. Now, if you're also wondering, well, how about if I don't use a template anymore? Maybe I used it for a while. We don't get that type of list anymore. I don't need it. It's in my way when I'm importing and I'm pulling in my list. You can make a certain amount of updates to the templates that get created. So for any admin users out there, we're going to go to admin, drop downs, and then import templates to take a look at those. So I'll go into the CRM and do that. Admin, drop downs, and then import templates. So we're going to see a full list of all of the templates that have been previously created. So these are everything that we've created. So if you kind of have some repeating ones, you know they're old just depending on the name or possible date that you gave them, you can click the X and get rid of it. Or you can deactivate it. Maybe it's something you don't want to get rid of, you're unsure, or it's just something that you're not going to use for a little while, but you'll pick back up and use it again later. We can just unclick the active checkbox. So it's not going to delete it, but it's going to remove it from the drop-down when we're on the very first step of the import, pulling in our template. Also, if you need to update the name of it, you can click the pencil, update the name however you would like, and then resave it, and that will make the change. It'll revise the change also in the import screen when we're pulling in that template. So that is basically the import with the duplicate check. So at this point, we can open this up for questions, anything that you saw along the way that you're not sure about. I'll check the question box over here. If you have anything, feel free to type those in and we can go over those. I have a couple here. Let me just take a look. Okay, the first question I got was, is there a reason you don't have a space between the physical address, example, physical address number 1? I like to cleanly just put in my header column name without any spaces, anything special. It will always map directly. You could even do first name like that. I did put a space between first and then name. You don't have to. You can just do first name. It's going to find it that way regardless. I'm just leaving little room for any error there or any confusion. It's going to easily map directly to the field that I want. So I just left out the spaces. Okay, the next question was, someone has had trouble importing Canadian zip code. What is the exact format for the zip codes? We've updated the import process to accept these zip codes much easier. So the Canadian zip codes, they have the letters and the numbers. At this point, I don't believe there should be any issues If to this day you are still trying to do an import and the system is rejecting the zip code that you are trying to enter, let your CRM analyst know so that we can take a look and figure out what's going on with that. Let's see. Oh, and the next question was, what are the qualifications for the duplicate check? I keep merging duplicates, but it's still adding the duplicates. Hopefully I answered this question by going over how a duplicate is determined. If that question is still not answered, please just reach out to us and we can decide, what is in the data that you're entering compared to what is already in the CRM and why it's not coming up. Like I showed you, and I can go back to that screen if it is helpful, how the duplicate is determined so that you can see it again. We're always checking for that exact email address match right off the top. If there is no email address or it isn't a match, it's going on to the second step here. And it's these 3 items together as a whole. It's not last name, then address, then zip code. It's all 3 of these together, like my example down below. Oh, and I think I just saw disregard the last question. Sorry about that. All right, so I got another question about importing states that are spelled out. That is another thing I should have covered here in the document. And let me pull up my document again so that we can take a look at that. So the best things to do here for the state column is we're always using abbreviations. That's the rule. The states always need to be abbreviated. And if that's ever confusing to you, you can always kind of take a look at, well, how do we populate that information in the CRM? What does that look like when I'm on a contact record? So I will go into one of the contacts that we imported today. And you can see here, let me edit. The state is using that abbreviated code to import. We do have the name spelled out when you're entering it here manually, but it is using that abbreviated code. So we need to use that. Another thing to maybe point out is the country field. You have 2 options. You can spell out the country like United States, or you can put in US. Now, you have to do one or the other. We can't have the document a mixture of US and United States. So some spelled out, some abbreviated. It all needs to be uniform. So state, always abbreviated. Country, it either is always abbreviated or always spelled out. I believe in my document, I spelled it out. So what I'm getting at is you can't have one of these like this. You can't have a combination. We need to decide on one or the other. And if you don't know what the abbreviation for the country is, you can also find those in the admin section in the CRM under admin, drop downs, countries. If you're ever confused, well, what is the abbreviation for a certain country? We have them here, specific codes that we use, that the CRM uses, so you need to make sure that they match. So if you're ever trying to import a country and you get an error because it doesn't know what it is, come into the country list and just check it out and see what is the true abbreviation for that. I'm just looking through the questions some more. All right, so one of the questions was, what do you do if someone accidentally imports into a field twice? So, and I have seen this happen where physical address 1, when you're going through that mapping screen, if you don't, if you miss, let me go into my slide here. Let's say, sorry, I cut it off right after physical address 1, but physical address 2 and physical address 3 would be right in row. So let's say I didn't remove the physical address 1 and I accidentally put it into 2 and 3. Well, of course, if your document wasn't very long and you can go in, you can clean those up by hand, perfect, we can do that. If the document had many, many records, this happened on all of them, it's a mess, just let your CRM analyst know. We can go back in and clean that up for you. Remove the address from row 2 and 3 if that's where it went. The next question was, if we have a multiple choice, how do we put that on the spreadsheet? I hope I went over that with the comma. So again, just to kind of reiterate that, if we're importing an interest, so an interest here, this drop-down is going to be full of all the possible interests that you have in your CRM, and it's very likely that someone has selected more than one of those at their time of inquiry. So just separate them by a comma. So if they are interested in golf, in your column in the spreadsheet, it should say golf, comma, casinos, comma, fishing, comma, and so on. And it's going to populate each one of those into the multi-select. Interest is just an example, but this will work for any multi-select field. And I think I've hit the end of the questions. Hopefully I went through all of them. It looks like a lot of these were being answered initially, but I was actually answering the questions as I went through the process, so that's good. If there's anything left over, please reach out to us. We will have a full list of all of the questions that are in here if I missed any, and we'll put those out on the forum. If you still don't have the answer to your question in the forum, please reach out to your CRM analyst and we can help you along. Please reach out to us for import training. It is very important that we make sure that you're very comfortable with imports. You know, we don't want any messes, and we want to help you clean up anything that happens accidentally, so don't be afraid to reach out to us for that. So if there's any other questions, feel free to continue to type those into the box or reach out to your CRM analyst. And I thank everyone for joining the webinar today. Thank you.